Red Bull's fight for the 2025 F1 World Championship is not showing any signs of slowing down. With only 7 races left, Max Verstappen and the team are refusing to let McLaren run away with it. And here's the twist. At a track that's historically been a bogey circuit not only for Verstappen and Red Bull over recent years, the signs from Friday's FP2 session suggest the momentum may be swinging back their way. Upgrades to the Red Bull, most notably a new front wing, debuted this weekend for Max specifically, alongside the revised floor seen in Monza, appear to have finally solved their Achilles heel, slow speed corner performance. And the evidence in a long run pace at the end of FP2's heavily red flag session, Verstappen averaged around 0.3 of a second per lap quicker than that of Oscar Piastri. That's not just competitive, that is a somewhat dominant advantage to have. And let's not forget, there are a few team and driver combos from FP2 that look like they will be in the mix as well. So let's unpack this. Red Bull have been rolling out small but deliberate upgrades in the second half of the season. The Monza floor was step 1, aimed at improving airflow consistency under the car and reducing the sensitivity and balance issues they had in that kind of corner. Now, for Singapore, Verstappen has been handed a subtle but smart front wing redesign. As reported, this tweak increases camber in specific sections of the front wing elements, generating extra downforce load without upsetting flow to the rear of the car. And of course, the aim is to sharpen slow speed corner entry and to improve balance through mid-corner, exactly the weakness Red Bull have had this season. Paul Monaghan, Red Bull's chief engineer, admitted this is likely the last major new part for the year, calling it their final push to keep Verstappen in contention. And as you can see on screen, you can see there is a subtle evolution of this newly revised front wing that they've been using in the second half of the season. This is a comparison from FP1 today of Verstappen and Tsunoda's front wings, and you can see there is very much a more pointed angle at the top of the final upper element on that front wing for Verstappen. And it's not just an upgrade to the front wing that they've brought for Singapore, they also have a revised engine cover specifically designed for this event in hotter climates. Now, this is to do around with the openings in terms of the cooling for such a high energy circuit and one with huge amounts of heat. What it's going to be doing is essentially allowing the engine to be run in a more optimum setting, of course, and to not have as much losses from having so much cooling openings on their engine cover. Now to Friday's track action. FP2 obviously was extremely messy. Oscar Piastri may have topped his timesheets, but the big story was Verstappen's long run pace. Now looking at the averages, Verstappen's Red Bull was consistently around the 0.3 of a second per lap quicker than the McLarens. Around a high downforce stop-start circuit such as Marina Bay, that margin is quite impressive. The tyre wear looked very much stable even in such a small sample size. The balance looked sharp, and crucially the car was no longer struggling in the tight hairpins and 90-degree corners that you find at this circuit. Now of course, if this pace translates into race trim, Verstappen could flip the expected Singapore result entirely. Remember, this has been a somewhat nightmare track for him. He's never truly dominated around here, often getting stuck behind rivals or seeing his tyres melt away. But in 25, that looks like it could be finally rewritten. And let's not forget why this track has been such a pain for Red Bull over the ground effect era. This circuit demands maximum downforce, traction out of slow corners, and imperious tyre management. And over the years, it's punished cars with weaknesses in heat control and of course slow speed balance. So this weekend, this weakness does appear to be solved. Verstappen's Red Bull looks planted, aggressive on entry and kinder to its tyres so far from the evidence gathered. And of course, if Verstappen, along with the overnight changes and improvements to the setup in terms of what Red Bull can do, which is usually a step ahead of the competition, this will give them the huge opportunity they need this weekend. Of course, it's not just Red Bull versus McLaren for this weekend. Ferrari and even Fernando Alonso's Aston Martin look to be in the mix. For example, the Aston Martin in Alonso's hands would have been the quickest car on track quite comfortably if he'd put his first one in FP2 on the soft tyre in before that red flag, thanks to Liam Lawson's red flag. He was quite comfortably up and having done over 3/4 of a lap on that set of tyres and then going out to do another qualifying lap on them later in the session, you could see by the end of sector 3 he was so much slower in comparison even to his teammate, going just over 0.2 of a second slower in sector 3 alone. And this is why it matters. If multiple cars split Verstappen from McLaren or vice versa, it's going to be acting as a buffer for whoever it gives an advantage to. So Red Bull don't just need Verstappen to win, they need McLaren to drop points. Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin could be playing a role in that this weekend for the championship. So here's the bottom line. Red Bull came into Singapore with their backs against the wall, but their latest upgrades look to have transformed their package. Verstappen's long run pace in FP2 was mightily impressive, and it's the kind of performance that makes you sit up and say maybe this fight for this weekend is on. This has always been one of Red Bull's bogey tracks, but not this year. If Verstappen carries this pace into qualifying and crucially the race, suddenly that slim 10 to 20% title chance that he has been given by fellow drivers will be a whole lot bigger. The likes of Marina Bay are ready, and the question is, can Verstappen use this momentum to really put pressure on McLaren and the title fight? But what do you all make of it? I would love to know your comments down below. Do you think this Red Bull resurgence we've had in the second half of the season will continue into this weekend, given everything we've seen and the evidence in long runs and short run pace and just how the car looks out on track? Let me know in the comments section down below on any of your predictions.